الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونستنصره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له كفوا أحد وأشهد أن نبينا وعظيمنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وحبيبه اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد يقول جل جلاله في محكم كتابه والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام. Today, this is the 17th khutbah and the final khutbah within this series that I started a number of months ago, Achieving the Balance. And it all comes back to two verses in the Quran that I think are worthy of your time for contemplation. Where he says subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Rahman, and indeed he created the cosmos and he established within them the balance. وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ, and he established a balance, a mizan. He's not talking about the scales of Yawm al-Qiyamah, because those are talked about in other parts of the Quran very clearly and explicitly. But here he's talking about a balance, and he continues to comment on it. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ. And when you attempt to perform anything in this life, any interaction of any sort, whether it's financial, social, academic, whatever it is, make sure that you are aware of the wazn, of the balance. وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ, and do not oppress the balance. Do not ruin it. Do not transgress against the balance. وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ. He used the same word 3 times in 2 verses. Repeating this very simple concept in a surah that talks about nothing but blessings. Surah Al-Rahman, all it does is just talks about blessing, one after the other, just counts blessing from the beginning of the surah till the end of it, asking you the question every couple of verses, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبُونَ, which of these blessings are you not willing to show gratitude for? At the beginning of the surah, he would talk about this concept, the mizan, the balance. Without the balance, nothing works. An unbalanced life is not a happy one. An unbalanced existence is one that does not end well. It just doesn't function properly. We know that about everything, by the way. Like, I'm not actually sharing with you anything that you don't already innately know. You just know, as a part of being a human being that's lived a little bit in life, you know that everything has to be balanced out. If you live without balance, then you're not happy and you ruin things and you harm people around you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His teachings, He established a balance for the human race to live by. That balance is very important. It's integral for their own survival. For their own survival. We don't know it, but that's the reality of it. This balance exists in every detail of our life, of our existence. Every detail of life, you find the balance there. It covers everything. It affects how you function mentally, psychologically, spiritually. It affects how you function socially and academically and financially and physically. It affects how the world actually works together, and whether people who are poor become poorer and people who are sick find relief, and whether we take care of the planet that we live on and the environment within we actually exist, and the one that we actually require to exist in a certain way for our own safety. That is not achievable without the balance. And I'm not going to talk about the bigger picture of things here because I'm just too small as a person. I don't have the ability to affect them. But I can help you at least understand that Islam itself is established on that balance. Without that balance, Islam itself doesn't work for you. I see it all the time. Those who are on either side of either extremes, the pendulum swings severely, unfortunately, in both directions. And if you exist on either of those extremes, Islam is not going to serve you. Islam won't do its job for you. If anything, you'll be harmed and you'll harm others because you don't know, you don't understand where the balance actually exists. That's why I could literally give this series of khutbahs until the day I die. I would find no difficulty at all. Very easy. It's the easiest series. The series of those who are lazy, who don't want to make khutbahs. Because everything is subject to a very delicate balance. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. These verses exist in a beautiful part of the Quran. I'm not going to explain them all. Explain the whole context in this khutbah will take too long. But in the midst of this beautiful story that he's telling, he points out in this ayah that almost seems out of place, but it's not. And it's just like that. That's what he says. Just like that. We made you a nation of moderation. As he's talking about a qibla. He's talking about an issue of qibla where they were facing Al-Aqsa, now they're facing Al-Kaaba. And there was just like, no, either this or that. No, it's not either this or that. You can easily understand both if you comprehend the balance. If you understand it's okay. It's okay to adhere to that which is authentic, but also have a new approach, something a little bit different. You don't have to be either this or that. Either you're against everything old or you're with everything old. La ya akhi. Life is not lived like that. The balance is there. You are made a nation of moderation so that you may be examples for the world around you. And so the Prophet will be your example. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He will be your example. And if you can't live his example of moderation, then you're held to that Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's from not understanding this balance that deviation comes from. That's where bid'ah comes from. That's where all forms of falsehood originate. They're rooted in a lack of understanding this balance and a lack of practicing it as such. Which is why I think this is something worthy for you as a Muslim to take time and contemplate and reflect upon. And before you build an undisputed, unchallengeable opinion about anything, maybe, just maybe, you ask around a bit and you see, are you balanced in that approach? Before you come and you're upset about things, and before you push a specific agenda that you believe in, and before you're extremely against one thing or very much with another, maybe you should just make sure that you are achieving the balance in your approach, that you've understood things appropriately, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to be understood. Islam is not, I don't own it. But here's the thing, neither do you. Islam belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it has to be practiced the way He wants it to be practiced, not the way I want it to be practiced. Islam is not subject to my desires. Islam is not it's not a creation of my mind or yours. You can't make Islam fit you. You have to fit Islam. It's a different way of looking at things. So how do you do that? You have to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Understanding what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants requires you and I to comprehend and achieve this balance. Over the last 16 weeks, I've talked, it's a small, but it's hard for you to see. I covered 16 topics within this series of khutbahs. I've talked about how to balance the fact that as Muslims, we integrate with any society, we tolerate and we live with them, no problem, but we also hold on to our identity. We don't lose ourselves amongst any group of people. I talked about the fact that as Muslims, we balance the advocacy of peace, but we refuse oppression. Advocacy of peace does not mean that you accept tyranny of any sort. That Islam is a deen that advocates for the rights of others, but protects its own rights to have our own values and to have our own opinions. We refuse the intellectual tyranny that is being practiced around the world. We want people to have their rights to believe and do what they want, but we need ours as well. To balance the role of men and women in society, we're not at war here. Brothers and sisters, we are not at war. This is not a conflict. What are you talking? There's no conflict between men and women. This is a partnership. It always has been. We just have to make sure that we balance these roles so each group understands that. Last week, I talked specifically about the fact that you have to accept, as a male, you have to accept the responsibility that is put upon you, but you're not allowed to abuse that power. You accept the responsibility Allah gave you, but you have to balance the power. To balance the essence and the mechanics of everything, as a zahir and as a batin. If you ignore one of them, Islam doesn't work. To balance the role of the heart and the mind in accepting Iman. If it's only the mind that's invested in the heart outside, doesn't work. And if it's only the heart, you are at danger. You're at danger to hear something that doesn't fit, and then you lose your faith altogether. Balancing tahrim al-halal, prohibiting which is not prohibited, or permitting which is not permissible. Both of them are horrible. Both of these actions are problematic within our deen. Balancing the components of tawakkul, where you're willing to put in your full effort, but you know that the results are in the hands of Allah. Balancing dua, so that you understand when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He responds to you. That response does not mean you're going to get what you want when you want it. I've seen too many people lose their faith over these things. I've seen too many people have a misunderstanding, a simple misunderstanding that causes them later on. It's like a little glitch in the coding. It's like a small mistake. Just leave it. Leave it. After a while, it'll present itself. If you let it go, you don't talk about it, just later on, it'll be a big kaboom when it does. If you fix it early on, no, we just need to adjust that. Adjust the understanding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is omnipotent, yes. But we are responsible to do our job. We don't question Him. We don't wonder why He didn't do this or why that's not our job. He is omnipotent. He does whatever He wants. We have to focus on our role. There is no nepotism. We don't deserve anything. Just do your job. Balancing, understanding that everything, there's a purpose and wisdom in everything, but still, we submit to His will subhanahu wa ta'ala when we can't understand it. Because you can't understand everything. Is that actually a statement that needs to be made? Of course I can't understand everything. To actually think that I can is very arrogant. So yes, we look for wisdom, but we understand sometimes it won't be clear. So we submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. This is what balancing asceticism in Islam and the fact that you are required to go and seek wealth. To seek wealth, go make money. Make a lot of money. Make as much money as humanly possible, but live with asceticism, live with zuhd. Live not because you want to consume it all, but because you want to use it for where it needs to be used. Balancing the fact that we believe in the unseen, but we're not superstitious. We're not going to run around abusing people based on our belief in jinn and hasad and sihr that is cultural and not Islamic altogether. Balancing these things. It's not that hard. But if you walk in with a bias and you're not willing to think about it, it's not something you're willing to even comprehend or subject yourself to some rational thinking or look into the evidence or listen to someone who has a different opinion, then the pendulum in your life will also swing. What we're trying to do is hold it down right in the middle, right at the wasat, right at that mizan. Keep that mizan right at the middle. It will swing, but you need to keep it right there. I had at least 4 or 5, 6 khutbahs I wanted to add to this, but we have 2 weeks until Ramadan. So I do want to talk about Ramadan, so I'm going to end it with today. The final piece of these khutbahs, kind of the most important of all, this whole build-up is to come down. The most important balance you need to learn in your life is the balance of who you are. As I grew up as a young Muslim, I always struggled with because this point wasn't explained to me explicitly when I was a kid. It took a while until my teachers actually used the terminology and explained the concept. So as a child, I was always struggling as well. Why am I doing all this? Okay, fine. We have to perform our salah. We have to perform our zakah and our siyam and our hajj and do our adhkar and memorize the Quran. But I couldn't figure out, it wasn't clear to me what the point was. what the purpose of all of it was. I couldn't see it, and that bothered me. As a child, I just couldn't wrap my head around it, and it always stuck with me. I was looking for something. I needed a bigger picture. I needed a role. I needed to see where my piece of the puzzle was fitting, who I was, those coordinates. I didn't know where I existed in this world. And if you could understand this piece today, then everything else will become very simple for you. Like everything I talked about will just be a natural consequence of your initial belief or your initial understanding of your role. I'll quickly translate. إخواني وأخواتي، هذه الخطبة الأخيرة في سلسلة الخطب هذه التي ابتدأتها حوالي 3 أو 4 شهور، وهي وغايتها تحقيق التوازن، تحقيق قول الله سبحانه وتعالى فينا وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا. وقد تحدثت عن مواضيع شتى مختلفة تصب في ميادين مختلفة. تحدثت عن قضايا تتعلق بالإيمان بالله سبحانه وتعالى وبأدوارنا. تحدثت عن علاقة الرجل بالمرأة أو رؤية الجنسين لبعضهما. تحدثت عن قضايا سلوكية تطبيقية كالتوكل والدعاء. تحدثت عن تحقيق التوازن في المجتمعات بين الناس إذا ما اختلفت أديانهم أو ما اختلفت توجهاتهم. تحدثت عن قضايا متعلقة بالظاهر والباطن والعقل والقلب والرجاء والخشية. هذه الأجنحة بدونها لا يستطيع المسلم أن يحلق أساسا. ومعنى تحقيق التوازن هذا هو أهم شيء تقوم به كمسلم في حياتك، الذي يتطرف إلى أي الاتجاهين. والله أي الاتجاه ما تفرق. أنا ما بين يعني بين تفريط وإفراط، وكلاهما شر. الذي يفرط في هذا الاتجاه شر، والذي يفرط في هذا الاتجاه شر. الذي لا يدرك التوازن كيفما كان الأمر يضر نفسه ويضر غيره ويسيء الفهم عن الله. هذا الدين ليس ملكي ولا هو ملكك أيضا. هذا الدين ملك الله سبحانه وتعالى. كلامه هو يجب أن يطبق كما يريد هو سبحانه وتعالى، لا كما أريد أنا ولا كما تريد أنت. الله سبحانه وتعالى هو الذي يقول كيف يطبق هذا الدين، كيف يفهم، كيف يطاع. لست أنا الذي أملي كيف يطاع الله. الله سبحانه وتعالى هو الذي يملي كيف نطيعه. وهذه الطاعة وهذا الفهم يحتاج إلى هذه الوسطية، يحتاج إلى هذا التوازن. أنت كمسلم إذا لم تسائل نفسك، إذا لم تتأمل قليلا قبل أن تتحدث في مسألة ما، قبل أن تكون رأيا صارما في مسألة، قبل أن تفعل ذلك عليك أن تبحث عن التوازن، تبحث عن ذلك الميزان حتى لا تخسر في الميزان. يا أخواني، إذا أخسرنا في الميزان فرطنا بهذا الدين كله. الناس لما نخسر في الميزان، الجيل القادم سيرى هذا الإخسار، سيرى هذا انعدام التوازن، هذا سيراه الجيل القادم، وهذا سيسبب للكثيرين مشكلات في الاعتقاد. كثير من أبنائنا وبناتنا عندهم إشكال في الاعتقاد، عندهم مشاكل، ما يؤمنون تماما، لأنهم يرون أن هناك انعدام توازن في قضايا يتم الحديث عنها لا عقل فيها، لا تقوم على دليل، يعني ليست مرجوة عند أولي الألباب، وهي تأتي من جيل لم يحقق التوازن في فهمه عن ربه سبحانه وتعالى. And the reason that I talk about these things before I give you the final piece of this series is because here's the reason. Here's where I bring these khutbahs from. This is my thought process. I watch too many young people remove themselves from Islam slowly over a lack of balance that they were subjected to growing up. They were subjected to an Islamic narrative that lacked a balance. The person was way too extreme. The person who taught them, whether it was their parents or maybe some teacher that they had, was in one form of extremist thinking, whether it was too conservative or too open, whatever it was. And that lack of balance causes people who are rational, who are logical, young people, they don't have biases. They don't have a lens. They don't see Islam through a lens that is cultural and it's like, we have these lenses. But forget about you don't wear glasses, doesn't make a difference. You still have a lens. You see Islam through your lens, the lens of the experiences that you went through in your life. Young people don't have that. So they look at things objectively. And when you have, even if you ruin a small aspect of the balance within Islam, it becomes apparent. They see there's something wrong. And it bothers them, and it continues to bother them until someone tells them that that's not the balance, or they are overwhelmed by people telling them, no, that is the balance, even though it doesn't make sense to them. No, that is balance. And they say, okay, if this is balance, I don't want it. And they walk away. And I have to ask the question, who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for that? They're not. Wallahi, they're not. They're not. They're asking rational, logical questions. They're looking at things, they're establishing an objective balance. But the people who are speaking to them didn't. The people who are speaking to them did not, because they never understood Islam that way to begin with. They didn't learn Islam appropriately. They didn't take time to try to achieve that. So you push people away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without even knowing. I deal with that way too often to ignore it. It's way too often. When it comes to me, it's too late most of the time. Way too late. The person's already made their decision a long time. They've packed up, they're leaving. The last attempt from their parents to save them, they bring them. It's too late, It's too late. This person has already, whatever I say, they're not going to believe it. They're going to think I'm apologetic. I'm not apologetic. When I talk about anything I talk about, by the way, on this minbar, there's no apologetic in it. There's not one apologetic word in it. Nothing. If you're like, oh, he's just saying it because no, nothing I say here is based on an influence or pressure from anyone, from Muslims or non-Muslims, from the country. I'm not pressured by anybody at all. What I say is what I actually believe to be the balance. Every single word is what I believe to be the balanced approach to our deen. And you have to think about that as well. We're not just behaving in a certain way because we can't afford not to. No. I don't believe as Muslims in this country that we have anything to hide or any reason to hide it or anything to be afraid of at all. At all. I believe our problems are homemade. Homemade stuff. Homemade, we're really good at making them. And we continue to produce them, and we have almost an infinite source of these problems. Let me bring it down to the basic idea of this whole khutbah. The role. Your role as a human being. What are you? What am I? A human, yes. What does that mean? In the larger scheme of things, what does that mean? Because other mammals seem to know exactly what they're here to do. I look at every other creature, from insects to birds to lizards, reptiles and mammals. Everything seems to know exactly what they're here to do. They don't have khutbahs. They don't come together. They don't discuss anything. They don't disagree. They don't. No, they just do what they're there to do. They know exactly where to go. Have you ever seen the tuna fish run? They know exactly where they're born, where they go to, where they die, when they reproduce. They just do it. They have no questioning. It's very easy. It's very simple. They sabbih Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that they know how to do it. But then me, I don't understand exactly where I fit. What am I here to do? When I came to this world, I didn't know exactly what my next steps were. Every other group of living creatures seemed to know exactly how to organize, where to go, how to live, how to reproduce, how dominance was going to be, and how governance was going to be established. But we don't. We need revelation. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually explain to us who we are. You are two things. I'm going to give this khutbah, I'm going to talk about it in two ways. You can start with one, and the other one is needed. Without it, everything is ruined. If you start the other way around, you need the other one, it's ruined. The balance here is you are a abd and a khalifa. That's what you are. You are the combination of those two things. If you drop one of them, you become something that you were not designed to become. You ruin it all. And if one of them is inflated and the other one is deflated, then you walk around with a limp and you can't get anything done. But this is who you are. This is who I am. I am a khalifa and an abd. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made me. That's how He created me. That's why you have these two coordinates. Yeah, this is your GPS. This is where you exist with. قال ربك إني جاعل للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. Ayah number 30 in Surah Al-Baqarah. Right at the beginning. I'm going to put a steward on earth. Someone who's going to be responsible. And then the second coordinate in Surah Al-Dhariyat. وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. You're only here to serve. I've explained these two concepts a lot, so I'm not going to go through the full explanation. You've heard them from me before. If you haven't, go back and listen to some of the khutbahs where I specifically talked about them. But you need to understand that the balance of these two things are what makes you a human, what makes you Muslim, what makes you functional. You're a khalifa, you're a steward, you're responsible, you're accountable. You need to care for other people's destinies. You have to see how people are doing. You have to make sure that the way you're behaving, if everyone behaved that way, the earth would actually be sustainable. And if not, then you have to take responsibility. That's not the case. You have to see something broken, you have to try and fix it. You have to see a gap, you have to try and fill it. You feel responsible for the well-being of everything and everyone around you on this planet. However, if you don't balance that with the fact that you're going to do it as an act of service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're doing it in His name, you're doing it trying to serve Him, you're not to control, you're not a tyrant, you're not in charge, you don't get to tell people what to do, you don't get to coerce anybody, it becomes a problem. If you drop the concept of ubudiyya, of service, then the person who takes on the idea of khalifa grows it and becomes a tyrant, becomes someone who wants to control everything. You have to balance it with the concept of that you're a abd, you're a servant. I'm a abd, that's the best way you can ever describe me. I'm a servant of Allah. So I do these things, I take care. I'm responsible. I feel responsible. I focus. I try to fix problems. I don't let things go. I take initiative for things, but I do it as an act of service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't, if you serve in Allah's name, then everything you say and do has to be something He's going to accept. He has to be okay by it. So if you have that checkpoint, then every time you say something, oh, would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala approve this? No? Then maybe I shouldn't say it that way. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم يا فوز المستغفرين استغفر الله. الحمد لله وحده وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبع نهجه ووفى عهده. Let's flip it around. Let's flip it around. You're a abd. You're a servant. You're here to serve. Servants don't have egos. Servants don't have agendas. Servants don't care if they own anything or not because they're just here to serve their master. That's all they're here to do. That's what we're here to do. If you don't balance that with the concept that you're responsible, you become very weak. You become very passive. You become delusional. You disassociate yourself with the world around you, and you're oppressed, and you're mistreated, and then you're forced out of your deen that you were trying to adhere to in the first place. So you lose whatever liberty you had to begin with. So you have to balance it with the fact that you're going to serve Allah. Yes, you're a servant. You have to be humble, and your heart has to be open. You have to be loving to people around you, because ubudiyya means love at the end. And as I explained many times before, you're going to do all that, but you're going to do it through feeling responsible and taking initiative and taking ownership over what's happening around you and making sure that you involve yourself in it. That's what it's going to be. That is how we're going to balance this. Imagine if you take one without the other, everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong. You take ubudiyya, you become passive and weak. And you have no power. You have no ability to make any change. And you're oppressed and you're mistreated and then you're removed from your deen anyways. If you do the first one, you turn into the tyrant. You turn into the oppressor, the transgressor yourself. You have to bring them together. That balance. If your role is not balanced, then I can't imagine that anything else I talked about can be balanced. If the role itself, if your definition, this is the definition, this is the description of who we are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, I don't know, an infinite number of things, maybe? Nothing's infinite besides Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But something close. Everything to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala is described. Has a description. Here's what they do. Malaika, here's their description. Jinn, here's the description. The mountains, the earth, the sun, the cosmos, other creations that He made that we don't know about. Have descriptions. You're a steward and you're a servant. Together. Not one of them, not either or. You're both. And the moment you drop one or deflate one or overrate the other, you become non-functional. And Islam doesn't do you any good. And you ruin your own deen and you ruin your own fate. Start there. Start with understanding these two concepts. Start understanding who you are and what your job is here, what you're here to do. And then you'll find every other aspect of Islam will just start to fit. The pieces of the puzzle will just fall into place easily. And I won't have to give 16 or 18 or 100 khutbahs on topics that are already balanced for someone who understands. You see, someone who understands that abd will never oppress anyone. They won't abuse anybody. They won't mistreat anyone around them because they understand, I'm here to serve. I'm not here to. Someone who's responsible will not walk around careless, will not walk around feeling that nothing matters and they don't know. Someone who feels responsible will take time and see a problem and dedicate their lives and show a certain degree of activism towards fixing a problem because they can see there's harm, there's suffering, there's agony, there's pain, and they have the ability to do something about it. So they do something about it. They stand there and they continue to work until they fix the problem. They don't get all upset for a week and demand the Sheikh give a khutbah on the issue so we can completely forget about it. Huh? What? Palestine is back, eh? I don't need to talk about that anymore. Maybe I'll just wait. I'll just wait until they bomb Gaza again. And then you'll come to me. Give a khutbah. Okay, I'll give a khutbah. I'll get all excited too. I'll give a khutbah. We'll all be hyped up and then we'll go home and we'll do nothing. We'll say nothing. We'll be involved in nothing at all. Because we don't understand the balance. Because we don't understand what we're here to do. Honestly, this is the reason. There's a lack of understanding of our role. Yes, a poster will come out. It'll offend us. So you'll demand answers. You'll demand action. You'll demand it for 2 weeks. And then you'll forget about it and move on. Because we have an issue here. We have a problem. We have a problem with understanding what we are as human beings. We are stewards and we are servants. Are you fulfilling both? Are you doing your part? Are you fulfilling both? Or just want others to do that? Here, you do it. You seem to be excited enough. You go ahead and do it. No. We all have to do this. For everything. For every aspect of life. Every problem that we have not solved, we didn't solve because we don't understand that we are servants and we are stewards. If we understood those two, the problems we had would not exist for 10 and 15 and 20 years, because the person who sees the problem will not allow themselves to look away until the problem is being addressed appropriately, whether it's with their own time and money and own time and wealth and expertise or knowledge, or it's the advocacy of others to help them to do it. But they won't allow problems to chronically exist forever unless those two ideas aren't balanced. I have some conclusions up there for you. Being a nation of moderation does not mean that we lack decisiveness. Doesn't mean that I'm wishy-washy, I can't make a decision. No. It's the opposite. It means that we are extremely decisive after we establish a balance where we are being responsible, we understand accountability, and we are trying to serve people. We're trying to serve. My job is to serve you. My job is to feel responsible for your deen, for your iman, for your level of commitment. I have to feel responsible, and then I have to stand up here and figure out a way to serve you, to help you, to allow you, not to control you, not to tell you what you can or cannot do and what you've done right or wrong, but to rather to help you out. The question is, what are you doing? Where is your piece of that for the ummah? What are you doing? Show me. Explain it to me. And when we don't do it well, we should be held accountable. And when I don't do it, I should be removed. Bring someone else who can do it better. But what are you doing? Because everyone has to approach life that way. I'm responsible, so I'm going to serve. Tell me where. Show me how. Because if everyone did that, a lot would have been different today. A lot would be different as Muslims today. A lot. That's your role. That's who you are. I'm going to leave you with these thoughts because there's nothing more I can say. This is what the Sahaba learned. The Sahaba learned, oh, we're a Khalifa. Oh, we're a Ibad. It took them a while. 10 years in Mecca, sitting in Dar al-Arqam, with the Prophet ﷺ explaining to them, Dawood, Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ardi, fahkum bayna an-nasi bil haqqi, wa la tattabi' al-hawa, fayudillaka an sabilillahi, inna alladhina yadilluna an sabilillahi, lahum adhabun shadidun bima nasu yawm al-hisab. They would hear Allah subhana alladhi asra bi'abdihi, Muhammad sallallahu ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, bi'abdihi. When he wanted to elevate his status, he called him abdihi, his servant. His servant. If you can become his servant, then you've achieved the highest accolade you can ever achieve in your life. He was sitting, alayhi sallam, one day eating. His knee was up to his chest. He's eating with a bunch of very, very, very poor people who wanted to bring him some dates because they want to share a meal with him. So he's eating. So a lady walks by. فَقَدْ أُنظُرُوا إِلَيْهِ يَأْكُلُ كَمَا يَأْكُلُ الْعَبْدُ وَيَجْلِسُ كَمَا يَجْلِسُ الْعَبْدُ. Look at him. He sits like a slave. He eats like a slave. She's mocking him. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم, his head was down. So he puts his head up. فقال ومن أعبد مني. And who's more of a slave than me? The slavest of slaves, the most servancy of servants is me. Of course, this doesn't offend me. Doesn't offend me at all. That's what I'm here for, to serve you. And he did, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He did. He served us. Till this day, he continues to serve us, alayhi salatu wasalam. But he also took responsibility. He was that perfect mixture. That perfect combination. Learn that and see how life will change for you. Doesn't mean we're not decisive. Doesn't mean that we lack clarity. It just means that we have to understand. I hope the conclusions make some sense to you. I'm not going to take more of your time. I hope that was a benefit for you. Inshallah, next week and the week after, we will do a little bit of Ramadan preparation. Hopefully, I can convince you to love that month as much as I do and enjoy it and benefit from it. It did a lot for me in my life, and hopefully it can do a lot for you. Next Friday, not this Friday, the Friday after. So not today, but coming Friday, we're going to have a mental or a wellness session after Isha instead of my tafsir, Arabic tafsir. It'll be after Isha. It'll be an open mic. There'll be some specialists here who are willing to take some questions and have a conversation on mental wellness, mental health, struggles that we have in our society. A lot of the specialists were very kind and generous with their time to come and actually sit here and listen to people talk. So I do ask you to attend, or if you know people who would benefit from attending this, then please do that. It'll be next Friday, inshallah, not this one. So just as an FYI, inshallah. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ أَمَرَنَا بِأَمْرٍ عَظِيمٍ فَقَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وارض اللهم عن الأربعة الخلفاء السادة الحنفاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي. وارض اللهم عن زوجاته أمهات المؤمنين، وعن آله الطيبين الطاهرين، وعن صحابته الغر الميامين، وعن التابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين، وعنا معهم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم فرج هموم المهمومين، ونفس كروب المكروبين، وارفع الغم عن المغمومين، وارفع الظلم عن المظلومين، واحقن دماءنا ودماء المسلمين. اللهم رد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين. اللهم ردنا أجمعين إليك وإلى دينك ردا جميلا. اللهم تب علينا من جميع ذنوبنا توبة نصوحا، طهرنا بها قلبا وجسدا وروحا، وما ذلك عليك اللهم بعزيز، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى، وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي، يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.